Okay, and hello YouTube. Welcome to my episode 2 of my Mandalorian review series. So I'm going to be covering episodes 4, 5, and 6 in this video. I said it in my last video, but I don't really feel like most content that involves going episode by episode is really all that great because there's only so much to cover about a 30-minute episode without having to recap everything that you've seen in the episode almost point for point. So I'm going to spare doing the recaps. I'm just going to talk in general about every single episode and what I thought about it. And if you guys have not seen the episodes yet, I'm not gonna spoil everything, but I'm just going to spoil a few things. So go watch the episodes first because I'm not going to go over the whole thing. So if you guys haven't seen the episodes and don't know what I'm talking about, there's your warning. All right, so here we go. So episodes 4, 5, and 6. Now, as a whole, I didn't feel like these episodes were quite as impressive as the first 3, but that's mostly because the first 3 were kind of setting up the introduction to the series, and by this point in the series, I thought we'd be further along in the general story. So I share a lot of the criticism that I've heard from other people about how the story does seem to be progressing very slowly, and it doesn't feel like the main plot involving Baby Yoda is being explored all as much as it should be. That being said, I still do enjoy each individual episode for what they are. It's kind of a meta thing because I'm acutely aware of how much each episode is up to the discretion of the various directors that are doing it. I mean, Star Trek does that too, but there are definitely some stylistic differences that you can pick up that make you kind of that doesn't necessarily click with every single person. So some of these episodes clicked more for me than others. So let's start. Let's start with episode 4. Now, episode 4, I don't remember the episode title off the back of my head, but it's the one where Mando goes to this remote planet to try and hide out for a bit, and he encounters Gina Carano's character, who I can't remember her character's name, which is like the only negative thing I could say, and he has to defend a village from a bunch of raiders and plays like the mercenary part in training up all the villagers and stuff. We've seen this plot play out, I think, twice in the Clone Wars, and we've definitely seen it in other movies. So this was a very, very familiar plot. Doesn't mean I didn't like it. I definitely liked it. I loved Gina Carano's character. I kept harping on after the episode was over about how Gina Carano feels like a very not forced female character who's definitely a badass, and I'm just sitting back, kind of in awe with myself, going like, okay, so they remember how to do a female badass, but they give her a little bit of credibility for why she's a badass in the first place. And anybody that's got a problem with that credibility, well, they can take it up with me, because, I mean, she's a military combat veteran for a military that had many women fighting in it. So that's the reason why she's not only a combat veteran, she's a special forces veteran. So that gives her plenty of combat experience to justify why she's able to stand toe-to-toe with the Mandalorian. Now, I think in a straight-to-head, head-to-head fight, I still think Mando wins out, but doesn't mean she doesn't know plenty about what she's doing. The episode itself, I mean, mostly I was very familiar with the formula of it, so I kind of just brushed it off as just like, oh, this is just a filler episode with a plot I've already seen. But I mean, individual things were done very nicely. I did love the village itself. I did really enjoy how they turned the AT-ST Walker into like this big imposing villain thing. It's kind of hard to take it seriously as a big imposing villain after seeing the Ewoks knock it down, but that might have been one of the reasons why they chose to do it that way in the first place. The actual end scene battle itself was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. Now, my only thing with this is something that Nerdrotic pointed out, or that I first heard on Nerdrotic, is that you would think that the Mandalorian would be aware that especially since in episode 3 you saw all the tracker beacons like light up, so he knows the guild is able to still track Baby Yoda. Why would he think that hiding Baby Yoda on this remote world would work? I mean, clearly these tracker beacons are strong enough to find that Mando is able to find him in a much more secure location than this planet was. So that kind of seems like a little bit of a plot inconsistency there. But I mean, Mando, I mean, for everything that he is, Mando doesn't seem like the smartest character, and that's fine. You know, he's not the smartest. He's not a perfect character. He's not the smartest guy in the world. So maybe he thought he could get lucky, and it really did feel like in this episode, like he was really trying to get rid of the burden that is Baby Yoda, but he's trying to do it in a way that still feels responsible and still lives up to his code of honor. Now, episode 5. Now, episode 5 was directed by Dave Filoni, and Dave Filoni's my man. But again, this episode feels like it's almost something exactly out of the Clone Wars, which again, I don't have a problem with. I mean, I love the Clone Wars, but it did feel very generic. Most of the beats, you could pick it up, kind of predict exactly where it's going to go. The pacing feels very methodical and like in a way where you're just like, okay, we're 15 minutes into this episode, they're about to do this. So, I mean, there weren't a lot of twists and turns. The betrayal by the main character, the secondary character, who I can't remember his name, call him Han Solo Light, is, it's, you see it coming, and then you clearly know that Mando's is absolutely not going to be threatened by this guy, because, I mean, there's no way in episode 5 that this little punk is going to get the one up on Mando. And the whole time, too, and it's probably directed that way on purpose, because I saw, like, a lot of people criticizing his decision-making. Like, Mahler was criticizing his decision-making on, oh, you knew that you were going to be betrayed. It doesn't make sense for his character to allow himself to be betrayed. I disagree. I think that the confidence that Mando displays in this episode was really nice for his character, in that he sized this kid up at the very beginning and just didn't see him as a threat. Didn't see him as a threat at all, which also kind of plays into a little bit more in the next episode. But he saw that the assassin was a genuine threat, and he didn't want to take on the assassin with just this kid as his only backup. So he definitely saw her as a threat, and she definitely was a threat, but not for a second did he ever think that, even with his back turned, that this kid was going to be a genuine threat. I did love all of the callbacks to Tatooine in this movie, or not in this movie, in this episode. And, I knew that Tatooine was going to be a setting, probably going to be a setting again. It's an Outer Rim planet that's got plenty of backroom deals, and the Hutts are still a thing. I mean, Jabba's dead, but the Hutts are still a thing, and as far as I know, the Hutts are still in control of, or at least have a large influence on Tatooine. So it would make sense that someone in Mandalorian's line of work would be visiting that planet quite a bit. I love the callback to the mechanic droids. The cantina itself was nice. People were talking about how the droids that were previously not served in the bar are now tending bar. As a bartender, I think that's a little insulting that you think you can just take all the nuance away of being a bartender and make a droid able to do it just as well. I mean, but these are the droids in the Star Wars universe, so they've got a lot more personality than robots would in this universe. So, I genuinely enjoyed myself while I was watching episode 5, but in general, it did feel just very episodic. Like, it felt like it was an episode of the Clone Wars, and there didn't really feel like there was a lot of stakes to it. Now, I did love the action itself. I loved the speeder chase. I loved the Mandalorian using Tusken Raider sign language to bargain with them. I mean, there's a lot of small things that I could point to specifically and say, I liked that. That looked cool. That was cool. That was done well. There's a lot of small things in there, but the sum of its parts, it just felt like an episode that, I could rewatch it, but it's really just going to be an episode where if this series ends up going longer, like if it's as long as Star Trek, I might just skip that episode. I might skip episodes 4 and 5 if I'm doing a rewatch and this series is long. As it is now, a rewatch is only 6 episodes long, so that would be a little overkill. So episode 6. Now, episode 6 I liked a lot more than the other two. I would say episode 6 is probably like my second favorite episode, maybe my third out of the ones that we've seen so far. And honestly, I was expecting a lot more of this like multiracial bounty hunting crew thing to be going on in this series than we've been getting so far. Um, we had episodes like this in the Clone Wars with Boba Fett or young Boba Fett. I don't like young Boba Fett, but I did like the fact that he had a crew, and that the crew were a bunch of squabbling mercenaries, each with their own agenda and self interest. That I feel plays very much to the kind of the feel of everything that's going on. Also, and again, this is something else that I've heard from another YouTuber, is that it was really nice having other characters on screen for basically the entire episode, because as charming as Mando is, and as loreful, and I've praised this before, as loreful as it is for Mando to say very little and never remove his helmet, it makes the character difficult to follow as just this primary only character. And some of the characters that we've had next to him have been pretty weak, specifically Han Solo Light in Episode 5. Gina Carano is fine, and we're probably going to get her back again. But this episode, the characters were way more colorful, especially Bill Burr's character. We got to see a Twi'lek again, a couple of Twi'leks, and you guys know from some of my previous videos that I'm really a big fan of the Twi'leks. I think that they should be explored more in the live action sense, since the animated stuff has done so much to give them the proper justice they deserve. And this episode, again, it's pretty predictable. It plays out like an episode of TV that you've seen before. In this case, it would be something more akin to like a, maybe something like an episode of like 24 or something. But it's a general like breakout or a heist breakout plot. And there's little things that go wrong. There's different things with the security. There's a time limit. There's a rush. I mean, it's all stuff that if you watch any amount of TV, you've definitely seen before. But the individual things are, again, just like the last episode. I mean, if you look at the whole episode, it's a pretty generic episode of TV. But if you look at some of the small things they did individually, there's a lot of really cool stuff there. There is the one instance of Mando taking down the droids in the hallway. That was dope. I was complaining the first time about how it really didn't seem like Mando was supposed to be using all of his weapons, but this time it kind of felt like, it was an appropriate place to use all of his gear, because these droids, these are like new Republic like battle droids. These are definitely like a notch above the others, and you could tell because they were resisting the blaster shots from the crew. But if you manage to get your hold on one of their blasters, they were very vulnerable to that. So they're definitely using better equipment. What did make sense to me is that none of the other characters picked up these blasters. They're clearly superior to the ones that they have. And also, again, I have to harp on the flamethrower. Guys, why are you using a flamethrower against a droid? Are you going to melt the droid's, exoskeleton off? That doesn't make sense. I think Mando might have just been using it to block his vision, but he could have, a smoke screen or something else on that kit for that role. It doesn't make it, especially since if you know that you're going into a mission where you're going to be fighting against droids, and he knows that beforehand, why would you even bring your flamethrower with you unless you're bringing it just in case the crew turns on you, which they do? The flamethrower is not used for something like that. You don't use a flamethrower against a hard, not flammable exoskeleton. You don't. That's not what a flamethrower is for. A flamethrower is for organic tissue, because organic tissue burns. You don't use it on mechanical things. Okay, so I have an issue with that. That's been a carryover from episode 3, but that's a small thing. I love the use of the grappling hook. I love the use of the little what are they called? Little birds on his wrist, the little rockets, even though those don't really do anything. I like how he was manipulating the ship to isolate the different crew members. The action in this scene is generally 8 out of 10, with the 2 points I'm taking off because, again, with the flamethrower thing. But the general banter and the interactions between the different crew members really carries this episode in a way that we've been kind of missing from the first two. Gina Carano and Mando have that scene at the very beginning of the episode where they have to fight with each other, but generally speaking, they're pretty cooperative with one another, so there's not really much tension there. And then in episode 5, I mean, it's directed as such so that this character, Han Solo Light, never feels very threatening, and you can't really take him seriously because he's such a green rookie that, again, it takes the tension away from when he finally becomes a threat, or starts to, you're supposed to think he's a threat to Mandalorian. What it does do is it does prop up his character and how much of a badass Mando is, but you get the same thing in episode 6 and it's done way better. So in general, I liked episode 6. I was somewhat, meh. Like, they were okay. They were entertaining, but they weren't bad, but they weren't necessarily good either. But 1 out of 3, not bad for this week. I am dreading at this point the 8-episode season that we've gotten so far, because we only have 2 episodes to do anything with the primary story involving Baby Yoda. And I feel like that might be best done in like a 2-parter episode for like episodes 7 and 8. I'm really hoping that at this point they do something with him. And I know that we've seen from the trailers that there's more characters we haven't seen. There's more of the Black Stormtroopers. I know we're going to be seeing more from the Empire coming up pretty soon. But I would rather they spend 2 episodes doing that than just 1. Because at this point, my main criticism is, and I was fine with like there being a couple of filler episodes. I understand this is television. But if you've got 8 episodes and only the first 3 really deal with the central plot, and then you've got the next 3 that really don't, that doesn't feel like the kind of pacing I would want from an 8-episode long season. It'd be something that I was fine with if it was like an anime core of like 12 episodes or 25 episodes, but definitely not 8. That feels a little too short to give you the kind of to give you the kind of pacing that is satisfying for a TV show. So those are my thoughts for episodes 4, 5, and 6 of The Mandalorian. I'll be doing another one of these videos for the conclusion of the series, and I hope to see you guys for that one. So thank you for watching. This is KT Vindicare.